Hello, everybody. Welcome into a nice episode of Around the Octagon. We have UFC 321 coming up this Saturday. We're here to break down that card, go through the full entire thing. Today, I am joined by the Coronel Combat Show. A friend of mine, Andrew, is here to collab with Around the Octagon. We are also joined by Son and Ryan. Boys, how we doing?
Doing good, baby. It's Rip.
Doing great. We're going perfect on picks this week. You heard it here first.
Yeah, it'll be a shame if you come in here one week and you're the first one to sweep the entire card. We've been off by one as far as entire cards goes, but if you sweep the entire thing, man, you might as well just take Around the Octagon as is. But before we get into the card here, a little bit of news to recap from last week, UFC Vancouver. One thing here I really want to talk about, and it was the main event there. Brendan Allen just ran through Reinier de Ridder, had some difficulties round one, a little bit early round two. After that, completely took over, dominated that fight. You saw round three, Reinier de Ridder was a little slow to get off the stool there. It seemed a little bit weird there with the referee. And then round four, they just waved it off. Brendan Allen wins by doctor stoppage, TKO. It seemed like a very weird ending. And Son, I'll let you kick this one off for us. A few questions being, what does this do to the structure of the middleweight division? Where is Brendan Allen in terms of getting a title shot? How far is he? And what'd you make of that ending there by Reinier de Ridder just opting to tap out of the fight there?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your first question, I think it definitely fucks a lot of shit up, honestly. I mean, very obviously, Brendan Allen was not supposed to be, winning this weekend. At least that's how I saw it. It didn't really seem that much set up for him, and he came in there and absolutely threw a wrench in that division. So I think he's right up there. He kind of takes RDR's spot in that whole gauntlet to get to the title. I know, obviously, Caio just lost. Maybe that's a fight we can take. And kind of depending what's going on with Fluffy Hernandez, I think it's very obvious that Imavov is going for that belt first, though, at least in my opinion. And then as far as, the way that fight ended, it was kind of weird. I mean, you don't really see too many guys quit on the stool like that. A lot of people online have been mentioning, the weight cuts he's had to do this year or in the past, not calendar year, but, length of time that is the year. I think he's had 5 fights within the last year, which is a lot of weight cuts. And obviously when you're a light heavyweight, when you're a guy that big, those definitely take a bigger toll on you. So, obviously that looked to me to have a little bit of an effect, but, at the same time, you can't really quit at that stage when you're on such a tear and you're kind of fighting for your place to, fight for that title. He definitely was not ready for a Chimaev matchup, even if had he won that. So, yeah, I mean, I think Brendan Allen's kind of right up there. He might be, second or third in line for that title shot.
Over to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan Allen looked great. Son pretty much touched on everything here. In terms of, who gets the next shot, it's probably going to be Imavov. I just checked the rankings now to see, because Fluffy Hernandez beat Brendan Allen earlier this year, so he's ranked 4 now. He took Reinier de Ridder's spot at 4. Brendan Allen's ranked 5.
Oh, there goes Ryan. So, Andrew, you have, in the meantime, with Ryan cut out, you have anything you want to add as far as how this fight went or what's next for that division?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. First of all, I think the thing that stood out to me the most about Reinier de Ridder, and honestly my biggest question since he came into the UFC, is it's not the first time he quit on the stool. He lost back-to-back fights in one championship, both against champion Anthony Malkin. There have been some steroid stuff in the past, but he lost his light heavyweight championship to Anthony Malkin, and he lost his middleweight championship to Anthony Malkin. And the second fight he had against Malkin, he basically quit on the stool. He didn't get up. And Herb Dean said, you got to get up, and he didn't get up, and the fight was over, right, in between rounds. So it's not the first time we've seen that. And then, but I thought, hey, he kind of got over this hump, looked great against Bo Nickel, was very competitive in a tough fight against Robert Whittaker. And then to me, it was kind of the same stuff we saw in one championship with him again. When he faced some adversity, he was kind of done on the stool. I agree with Son. I think it could have been a weight cut problem, right? 5 fights in a calendar year since his UFC debut last November against Jared Nealsharp. But even then, it's not a great excuse to lose by exhaustion, really. I think for me with the result, I think Nasruddin Imavov is the biggest winner this weekend by far. He has wins over Brendan Allen. And with his win over Kyle Baralho, I think he's the clear guy at 185. To me, the other big winner this weekend, who didn't even fight, Fluffy Hernandez. Although I think he would have destroyed Reinier de Ridder. I think he would have eaten him alive, given what we saw this weekend. But Fluffy Hernandez has a win over Brendan Allen in the UFC this year, has another win over him in LFA for their title a couple years ago. So I think he's another guy who's probably one fight away from a shot.
Definitely, Andrew. And I like that you touch on Reinier de Ridder's prior problems with, kind of tapping out of the fight a little bit. Granted, I know the circumstances were a little bit different when that happened prior. I know he was fighting up a weight class and whatnot, but it is something to note there that it has happened multiple times. And as far as everything goes, as far as how the middleweight division kind of plays out, I think you guys touched on everything there. And Ryan, now that you're back, I don't know if you have anything additional you want to add, or if you're ready to just get onto this card.
Yeah, I was just going to say they updated the rankings today. Only interesting thing to note, and like Andrew just touched on, because Fluffy Hernandez has already beaten Brendan Allen this calendar year. He's now ranked 4th, so he took that spot, Reinier de Ridder's spot in the rankings, and Brendan Allen's ranked 5, respectively. So,
one other thing, I guess, while we're talking about Fluffy Hernandez a little bit, I did see something about him withdrawing from a ridiculous amount of fights, and it is speculated that he might be overtraining, and people don't know exactly what's going on over there. So it is kind of tough for the UFC to rely upon someone who does pull out as frequently as Fluffy. So that's one thing to take away from it. But yeah, I agree with about all that you guys said there. But let's get on to UFC 321. We will start with the early prelims. And this is one I wish Luke was here for, because Luke always talks about how we don't like betting women's fights, first fight of the nights. And to kick us off, we have Jacqueline Amorim at -475 taking on Mizuki here. This is like I touched on, a women's fight starting off the pay-per-view. Mizuki is 2-1 in her UFC career, with her last one being over Hannah Goldie 25 months ago. To be honest with you, I did not know that Mizuki was still on the UFC roster and was still currently fighting. So that is one thing to note there. And on the flip side of that coin, you have Amorim, who was on a 4-fight finish streak. So Ryan, we'll kick this one off with you. Do you see Amorim continuing her momentum here as the sizable favorite?
I do, man. There's not really much to note about Mizuki. Like you said, she hasn't fought in 2 years and 1 month. Put together a split decision win for a UFC debut, then lost her next, then won a pretty comfortable decision against Hannah Goldie. But other than that, this seems like the UFC just trying to get a name out there for a rising star as a women's fighter. So I don't expect much out of this. I think this should be pretty comfortable. That's pretty much it.
Over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Jacqueline Amorim. 4-fight win streak, all by finish. You don't see that a ton at 115 pounds. 2 fights in 5 years for Mizuki Inoue. That's not a great statistic. That jumps off the page. Really don't think this is going to be that competitive. I think the betting line shows that. For me, if -500 seems a bit steep, you never know with women's strawweight, I guess. But if you're going to take a prop, you can get the early pre-owned props aren't out yet, but Amorim by sub is like -115, -150. Maybe take a sprinkle of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not too much else to add. What is interesting though is this Mizuki girl has fought a lot of the top women fighters that we see. Back in 2015, she had Alexa Grasso. A year or two later, she had a fight with Jandiroba, who are, obviously 2 very highly ranked women. And then she, in 2020, she lost to Amanda Lemos. So really just like fighting a lot of the best fighters that, are on the whole women's roster in general, not even just specifically for one weight class. So I wouldn't be too surprised if, she did win this as an underdog. But, I'm probably not really going to be paying attention to this fight too much, at least not enough to bet on it. So I'm just going to go with Jacqueline Amorim, probably keep that finish streak going, especially after, kind of way too long outside of the cage for Mizuki.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep with Amorim here, and I'll keep it short with my reasonings. Andrew, I like how you touched on Amorim's grappling. I know Mizuki has had 1 submission loss in her career, and sound like you touched on that was against Virna Jandiroba. So I think the submission upside is there for Jacqueline Amorim. And one more thing I'll say about her is a lot of times you don't see too many women who are able to just constantly rack up finishes against opponents. So the fact that she was able to finish 4 opponents in a row shows that she should be towards that upper echelon caliber of women's fighter. So I'm excited to see what she's able to do. But moving on, we have a matchup between Aset Maxim at -370 taking on Mitch Raposo at +280. First and foremost, shout out to Tom Pags, who I know who is out there in Abu Dhabi right now supporting his teammate Mitch Raposo. Friend of the pod. We had him on for the interview, so hopefully all goes well there. And fuck it, actually, while we're on the topic of it, shout out Connor Matthews too, because I know he's in that camp. But both Maxim and Raposo are coming off a pair of losses, which is, I guess, slightly concerning given that both were decent prospects here coming into the UFC. And Andrew, my question for you will be, which one do you see riding the ship come Saturday?
Yeah, well, you should have told me beforehand that Mitch Raposo's guys were friends of the show. I do think both of them coming off of 2 losses, but I think against who is very important, right? Aset Maxim's last 2 losses, Charles Johnson, Tagir Ulanbekov, those are both top 15 flyweights. Charles Johnson has a knockout win over the #1 contender at flyweight, Joshua Van, who's fighting for the title in 3 months. So, there's no harm there. And he actually was pretty competitive in that fight early. And then Tagir Ulanbekov out of that Khabib Nurmagomedov camp, not much there. The frustrating thing with Raposo for me has been he's lost both those fights by split decision. And I think there is something to look at there. But Andre Lima, good prospect, to me, just did not throw enough output in that fight to be competitive in rounds 2 and 3. And then the Umar Nurmagomedov fight, kind of the same thing. And so for me, I actually think Raposo can win this fight on paper. He's just going to have to increase his output against a guy who has fought better competition in Aset Maxim.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree with you there. I don't think there's, at least for me, I don't really see too many ways of victory or paths to victory for Mitch Raposo. Obviously, the Tagir, Ola, whatever, Tagir fight and Charles Johnson fight, both age really nicely. I mean, both guys are very, very good, like you touched on, Andrew. But, losing a split decision to fucking, what's his name? Umar Nurmagomedov is just, that's just like, that really just throws me off. I mean, it kind of shows you what level you are. He's like a low gatekeeper in that division, unfortunately. So I got Azat, taking this one by finish, probably in the first round. If I remember correctly, too, that fight he had with Tagir was like crazy. Like it was, they both had like pretty decent output, and there's a very good scrap. So I think Azat's kind of due for this weekend, and he's going to get a finish.
Yeah, like the one thing that really jumped off the page to me about Mitch Raposo in his last fight, like you touched on with Umar Nurmagomedov, is he had 13 total strikes, 9 significant strikes in that entire 15-minute span. So definitely not the type of output you want to see, especially from guys in the flyweight division who are just known for volume striking. Like most of these guys that call you over days and put out shots, and didn't really like what I saw out of Mitch Raposo in his fight against Umar Nurmagomedov. And like you both touched on, especially you, Andrew, Maxim's fought like the gauntlet for his first 2 fights in the UFC, and I do see him getting his first W come Saturday.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately going to side with Aset Maxim on this one too. And well, I do think Mitch Raposo can out-grapple Maxim here, and that is the route to victory that I see, Andrew. I don't know if that's what you were alluding to as far as the grappling goes here for Raposo. He is a very, very qualified grappler, but Aset Maxim is pretty solid in the grappling department himself. I don't see him just getting grapple fucked for 15 minutes here against Raposo, and I think he'll just outstrike Mitch Raposo at the end of the day. He'll out-volume him, and that's just how I see this fight going. So -370, I think that line fits the fight pretty well. Now, moving on, we have a matchup here, a fun one between Hamdi Eldel Wahab at -425 taking on Chris Barnett at +310. And this is really just a fight of low-level heavyweights, if we're going to be, completely honest here. Barnett is on his way out. He's had one fight in the last 3 years, and it's one in which he fucked up his knee last year in Abu Dhabi, throwing some shots that Chris Barnett probably should not be throwing. And on the flip side of that, you have Hamdi Abdel Wahab, who is 1-1 with a no contest in the UFC, with his loss being to Muhammad Usman and his sole win being to Jamal Pogues by split decision. So a little bit of an awkward one here to handicap on, and I'm going to give you the difficult job of doing it first.
Honestly, this one's pretty straightforward for me. I love Chris Barnett. I think that kid's exciting. I'm not kid; he's almost 40. But I think he's super exciting. I mean, he's a big man who can move like a fucking ballerina, and I don't think anybody is against watching that. He's also got some pretty slick grappling, and he's surprisingly mobile for how big he is, and obviously being a heavyweight. And then just on the other hand, you have Abdul-Wahab, who I just don't really. Like, I don't really see a lot in you when you're losing to Muhammad Usman, who has just been turned out to be kind of a bum in the heavyweight division. I hate to say it. So just don't really see too much from Hamdi. And then obviously you have Chris Barnett, this like fucking, I don't even want to say it, but he's cool, man. He's kind of shifty. So I'm going with Chris Barnett here. I see it as a way to victory. And then, you know, if he wants to retire, it'll be a good way out for him.
So before you go on here, Ryan, I like how you said, now this one's pretty simple for me as you proceed to go on and just say the plus 310 underdog. So
yeah, dude, straightforward. It's straightforward.
Yeah.
That's great.
Son, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one.
All right, whatever.
A couple of things to note here is Chris Barnett's 265 fighting at 5'9". So, you know, he's my height.
You're going to find out, dude. You're going to find out.
He should probably
find out, Ryan.
He should probably be fighting at like lightweight. And I mean, outside of his one spinning wheel kick KO, haven't seen much greatness out of the guy. And moreover, Hamdi Al-Wahab, you know, maybe not the greatest fighter, but very competent wrestler. And when Chris Barnett fought Martin Buday, he just got wrestle fucked for 15 minutes in that fight. Did not look good at all. And I don't expect anything less coming into this fight with Wahab, who's a very competent wrestler. I'm pretty sure he's an Olympic caliber wrestler coming out of Egypt. So also, dude got popped for steroids. If you're not cheating, you're not trying to win. I have Abdul-Wahab winning this one fairly comfortably. It's going to be a snooze fest decision fight. I mean, obviously, Chris Barnett's game, he might throw on those spinning kicks and catch the guy, but both fighters, not too really much to talk about. And yeah, the part of the injury thing is Chris Barnett, again, being 5'9" and 265, jumping before your fight, getting called and twisting your ankle loss isn't the greatest thing to see out of a UFC fighter. So give me Abdul-Wahab by decision here. It's going to be boring. Go take a shit during this one. Enough said about it.
Yeah, I think this fight's it's not great. Son, it sounds like we got to book your tickets to Madrid next year. UFC Spain, not headlined by Ilia Topuria, but Chris Barnett is going to be in the.
Hey, I'll be there, dude. Also, I was very surprised to find out that motherfucker's Spanish, or he's Spanish. Yeah. Like, he does not look like he's from Spain. I'll tell you that much.
Nope. I got a stat for you. There are 4 UFC flyweights on the roster that are listed taller than Chris Barnett. So 5'8", 265 Oompa Loompa build is it's not what I would go with. Yeah, I think it's pretty simple on paper, or maybe not simple on paper, but 39-year-old overweight heavyweight coming off of 3 surgeries because of his pre-fight celebrations. I don't think Hamdi Abdul-Wahab is good at all, frankly. I think he's a very moderate striker on the feet with half decent power before he got into the UFC. And I don't think Muhammad Usman is awful, but I don't think he's very good either. He's probably like the 40th best heavyweight in the world. And so losing a decision to him doesn't jump off the page for me, but I just, unless Chris Barnett lands that spinning wheel kick again, like he did against maybe Gene Vellante at Madison Square Garden, I don't know what he's going to get out of there. So I'm going to Hamdi by decision, I guess, but it's brutal. This fight sucks.
Yeah, I saw Hijab's Picks put out a video talking about like why them and Abu Dhabi want Chris Barnett back there, because last time he was there, he obviously had injured. And they're like, oh man, they see this like fucking 5'6" heavyweight jumping around. They probably think he's fucking hilarious. They'll bring him back for another run around and get their hometown Hamdi a nice win. And that is likely what's going to happen here. I mean, Hamdi's faster. He's the better wrestler. He is an Olympic, I believe Greco-Roman, Ryan, for Egypt there. And he is probably the better striker here opposed to Chris Barnett. So unless he gets caught by something crazy, which I guess can always happen at the heavyweight division, I don't see Hamdi losing this fight. So I'll make that actually not a clean sweep because someone had Chris Barnett actually. So 3-1 here for Hamdi. And now moving on, this is one that I am extremely excited about. We have Nathaniel Wood at plus 125 taking on Jose Delgado at minus 150. Delgado coming in as a slight favorite is one who I have been super high on ever since his Dana White Contender Series finished last August. And he has shown why since, with his 2 round 1 finishes here in the UFC over Connor Matthews, who I'm a fan of, but beside the point, and Hyder Emil, which was a very impressive, quick round 1 finish in his last time out. Ryan, you're going to kick us off here. Do you see Jose Delgado continuing his momentum here, given the big step up in competition that is Nathaniel Wood?
Man, I mean, the guy's riding so much momentum, and I obviously thought Hyder Emil had a chin of steel. I was very impressed that he was able to get him out with that crazy knee in round 1 when he fought earlier this year. Things to note, though, I mean, Nathaniel Wood's seen pretty much the brunt of it. Wins over Morgan Charrier, Daniel Pineda, lost to Muhammad Naimov, but probably should have been at least a draw. I thought it was egregious reffing when he got kicked in the nuts, I think 3 times in round 3, once in round 2. There should have been a point taken there. Wins over Charles Jourdain, Andre Fili, not the craziest, but still, I think in terms of what Nathaniel Wood's seen in the octagon, he's pretty much seen it all. And I think the train kind of stops here when he gets for Jose Miguel Delgado. I like the guy. I just think this might be a little bit too soon, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually really agree. I think Delgado's the sexy pick. I'm actually surprised there's not more money coming on him. I thought minus 150. I thought you were gonna have to pay more. So it's decent to get him at that price. I was really impressed by Nathaniel Wood against Morgan Charrier in London earlier this year, because I think Morgan's legit. The striking people who, in my opinion, are in the know think Morgan's legit, and so Nathaniel Wood going out there is impressive. The one problem with me, he doesn't finish fights. And I think, I saw someone this week complaining that Nathaniel Wood wasn't higher on cards, and then people are going through, and I think his last 8 or 9 fights have been a decision. It's when you have a guy as dangerous as Delgado, who has looked as dangerous as he has, 3-fight knockout streak with Contender Series and the 2 in the UFC, to me, just that finish potential early is too good to pass up on. So I'm going Delgado by early finish, probably late round 1, early round 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nathaniel Wood can just dance on the feet, pick him apart like he did in March of this year.
Yeah, I thought you were definitely going the other way. I thought we were all going to go on Nathaniel Wood here, but that's who I'm going with. Ryan, I love your breakdown on it. He's definitely seen some really strong people. Charles Jourdain specifically, a decision win there is very impressive, especially with what we've seen recently out of him. So that win definitely fucking aids wine. And Jose Delgado, I think pretty similar to you, Ryan. I think he's kind of just going in a little bit too soon to a guy like Charles Wood. Or Nathaniel Wood, sorry. So I don't know. I think he's kind of running on a brick wall here. It's going to be tough to get past him, especially a guy with so much really good and high-level experience as Nathaniel Wood has. So I'm going Nathaniel Wood here. I could see it going by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised with a finish from Jose Delgado. But if Nathaniel Wood's winning, I think I got it by decision.
Yeah, I'm going to side with my boy, Jose Delgado here. I think Delgado is the truth. I said it when he fought on the Contender Series. I see this guy as a legitimate problem here in the featherweight division. And, dude, he is a lengthy motherfucker. He's fucking big there at 5'11". He's long. He utilizes all of his limbs extremely well. He can throw the knee. He can throw the elbow. He can throw the straight shots. I think it's going to be hard to sit on the feet for 15 minutes as Nathaniel Wood, with the pretty sizable size and reach disadvantage, and just think you can outstrike Jose Delgado, who is extremely active. Now, my concerns come in where if this fight goes later in round 2, round 3, what's Jose Delgado going to look like then? I don't know, because he's never fought there. He has 10 finishes. He doesn't fight late in the fights. And if he did fight there, it wasn't against someone the caliber of Nathaniel Wood, who has been in there with UFC veterans doing it. So that does concern me, especially with how high Delgado's output is. I don't know if he can keep that up over the course of 15 minutes. So that's a cause for concern, but just based off the merits of damage, Jose Delgado is going to win rounds. He's going to win the early rounds. He throws high output. He's going to hurt Nathaniel Wood. I think he'll at least win round 1. I think damage base, he can win round 2 if it were to go to decision. If not, I think he gets Nathaniel Wood out of there. Give me Jose Delgado. Let's go. Now, moving on, we have another fun heavyweight bout. What's up with these fun heavyweights, huh? It's Chris Barnett's on this card. Now we got Walter Walker at minus 310 taking on Louis Sutherland. Walter Walker is, he was supposed to fight last weekend until Muhammad Usman pulled out didn't pull out, was withdrew due to a failed drug test. Walter Walker is riding the momentum of 3 straight heel hook submissions. I know going into that matchup with Muhammad Usman, he said he was going to finish him on the feet. Now he's talking about a 4th heel hook. Andrew, are you siding with Walter Walker or Louis Sutherland? And if Walter Walker, how do you see him getting the job done?
It's like one of the best like low key stories, if you know in the sport right now. 3 leg locks in a row. 4 heavyweight fights on this card, and I think it reigns true. Walter Walker hasn't fought anybody. Like I like his 3 leg locks in a row. It's been funny. I actually think there's leg lock potential again this weekend. The one worry for me is who has he fought? But once again, like getting an absolute layup here in Louis Sutherland. This is his first fight in the UFC. He fought once or twice in Bellator, once or twice in PFL, but he's just not a guy that jumps off the page film-wise for me. He's not crazy athletic or crazy fast or anything like that. So I actually think Walter Walker might submit him again. But to me, if Walter Walker were to fight like a legit top 15 guy, like I don't know, like a Marcin type Ure or someone like that, I might be rethinking where I'm going. But against the competition, Louis Sutherland, not a great guy that jumps off the page. Probably going Walter Walker. I don't know if there's good enough odds for me here. If he's like -310, -320, for me to put something on that. But I think Walker's decent enough to beat a very mediocre Louis Sutherland.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going Walker by submission, actually, and I feel really good about that. I mean, Louis Sutherland, I picked, in his supposed to be debut fight, I did pick on his side because he's got a funny nickname, the Vanilla Gorilla. But that was against Justin Tafa, a very winnable fight, especially with what we've seen from both of those brothers. You kind of just are not too excited about anything that's going on over there in that camp. But Walter Walker is legit, dude. I mean, he has 2 or 3 really good submissions. It's obviously a very funny thing. And I honestly think he can do it again this weekend with another heel hook, especially in a really slow, not really nimble. And I don't really see too much wrestling out of this guy, Louis Sutherland. I was pretty low on him as a prospect. And, I only had him winning because it was against Atafa. So I'm going Walter Walker here by submission. I feel pretty confident in that, honestly. I'll definitely be tossing that in a parlay.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me just because I don't know too much about Louis Sutherland. I know he's supposed to make his UFC debut a couple weeks ago. I wish that would have happened so I get to know more about the guy. The only thing that comes and concerns me in this is you've seen this before of guys making the UFC debut where they just have like plot armor essentially, especially at the heavyweight division, which is fairly lackluster with talent compared to any other division in the UFC. I mean, it's pretty much one of the worst. They only have like 33 active heavyweights on the roster, But other than that, Walter Walker's put on that impressive streak after losing his UFC debut to Louis Bresky. 3 heel hooks. I want to see 4. I want to see him chain this together. I think he'll be able to get Louis Sutherland to the ground. I think I'll be shocked if he doesn't and he's not able to, and Louis Sutherland's able to cap the wrestling, because if he is able to stop the wrestling and the takedowns, Walter Walker's going to be in for a rough one, because all I know about Louis Sutherland is he has power behind those hands. Other than that, pretty confident in Walter Walker being able to get this one done. And the only other thing about the guy is I can't believe he's 27 years old. He looks like he's pushing 50. It's a rough 27. He's only like a year and a half older than me, which I just find to be absolutely absurd. So give me the guy aging like milk and Walter Walker.
Yeah, I think you guys touched on about all the points there. I mean, we highlighted Walter Walker's submission threats there. Ryan touched on kind of the lack of knowledge there of Louis Sutherland. And yeah, I'm going to side with Walter Walker here as well. I think just being in there with a higher level of competition, having that UFC experience is always something to feel comfortable with. Riding a little bit of a win streak. Get me Walter. Let's lock up another heel hook, and just so the MMA memes can go crazy. I'd love to see it. But moving on to the lightweight division, we have Abdul-Kareem Al-Wasadi at -120 taking on Mateus Camilo. Both men looking for their first UFC win here, but one thing I really want to highlight is all 4 of Al-Wasadi's 4 professional losses have come via the knockout, like his UFC debut last March. Now, San, I believe you're kicking this one off. Do you foresee that chin being a problem here in this fight?
I could definitely see it be a problem, especially with kind of the run that Mateus Camilo has been having recently. Maybe not in his last few fights, but he's got a couple knockouts in within his last 10 fights. So he obviously has, the capability of knocking somebody out. And I just don't really see too much and Al-Selwady to kind of bet on him. Obviously, this is pretty much a toss-up, but if you're going to give me, plus odds on a Brazilian guy that's, how many years younger than him, I'm going to feel pretty good about it. So I'm tossing on the Jaguar here. I think he's going to take this one. I could definitely see the chin being a problem, but if he doesn't get knocked out, he definitely has that submission threat there too. He's a pretty nasty grappler from what I can see. So give me Camilo at plus odds here.
Honestly, I didn't really pick a fighter in this. I'm not too high on either guy. The only bet I'm taking on this fight, and it's probably the first time I've ever done this, is inside the distance. That's where I'm laying my money on in this fight. I think one of these guys either gets tapped out or knocked out here, but I'm not confident on either guy. I mean, what's his face? Camilo lost his last fight to Gabe Green, who's made famous in the UFC by getting knocked out to Brian Battle in 14 seconds. Probably one of the dumber game plans I've ever seen, which is just to charge full force into Brian Battle, push him up against the cage, and then, he paid the price for it. In terms of the other guy, like I said, not too high on him either. So I see this fight ending by finish, and I don't want to take anyone in this fight. So I'm placing a bet on this one. It's inside the distance, and that's what I'm going with.
Shout out to my guy, Brian Battle. Should be in the UFC right now, but he's not. I agree with Ryan. I actually think this is to me probably the hardest fight to pick film-wise on the prelims, just because neither guy jumps off the page for me. The striking statistics for Camilo are really concerning. 1.48, 1.49 significant strikes landed permitted is low. That is not good, especially for lightweight. That'd be low for heavyweight or light heavyweight. I just don't think Al-Selwady is very good. Like he looked okay in his Contender Series fight against somebody. George Hardwick. Yeah. So it's like, so I don't really know on this one. I'm going to go Camilo by decision. I think this fight's going to be ugly. Maybe Splitty City or something like that, but neither of these guys jump off the page for me.
Yeah, dude, that's the problem. When I was handicapping, they were trying to handicap this fight because I look at Abdul-Kareem Al-Wasadi and his chin just seems like such an obvious concern to me. But on the flip side of that, you look at Matheus Camilo and he just doesn't throw output, but he does have power in his hands. So that's the thing where it's like, can he catch Abdul-Kareem Al-Wasadi here? Yes, I think about any UFC caliber lightweight here probably could, but I just don't know if you're going to be throwing a punch and a half per minute, if you're going to give yourself the opportunity to do so. But I do lean Matheus Camilo here at plus 100. I'm just very anti Al-Selwady. So I will side with Camilo here, and we will move on to an actual fun lightweight matchup here between Ludovic Klein at minus 150 opposing Matheus Rebecki at plus 125. We have two guys both looking to rebound here. Ludovic Klein is coming off that loss to Matheus Gamrot, in which he was really just kind of grapple fucked by Gamrot, which Gamrot does to a lot of people. The always exciting Rebecki lost a war to teammate Chris Duncan in his last appearance. Andrew, my question for you will be, which two of these lightweights do you see rebounding here?
This fight is fucking awesome. I think this is the best fight on the prelims, in my opinion. Both of these dudes is just so dangerous. In my opinion, we'll talk about this with the featured prelim as well. Unranked lightweight. If you ranked unranked lightweight against like 6 of the other men's divisions, like I would pick unranked lightweight. It's just killers up and down. Everybody's dangerous everywhere. I have 2 concerns. The first one is the amount of damage Matheus Rebecki has taken in a year is just absurd. He's went to war twice, 2 fight of the nights, honestly, like 2 fight of the year contenders. The fight against Chris Duncan in that co-main event in the Apex this year was just bananas. And then his fight against Miktabek Oralbai last October was like one of the greatest fights of all time, in my opinion. It's like a low-key banger. He's just taken a ton of damage in those 2 fights. And I worry about that for a guy who's 32, for a guy who's been in the UFC a long time. And then on the other hand, you had Ludovic Klein, who was on like a 7-fight win streak or 7-fight unbeaten streak because he had that draw against Jai Herbert. But he's legit, man. And Gamrot lost last week, and so maybe that loss doesn't trend as well for Klein. But I think this fight is electric. I'm taking Klein by finish. I think maybe 2nd or 3rd round. I think he beats up Rebecki. I think the fight's going to be a war for as long as it goes. But I'm just really concerned about the amount of damage Rebecki has sustained over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'm going with Rebecca here. I think his last fight was super exciting. Certainly a lot more than what we saw from Ludovic Klein against Gamrot, although obviously it's Gamrot. But we did see what happened to him this weekend. Obviously it's against Charles, but I don't know. It's just it just seems like a big comparison game to me. If I keep doing that all day, so I'm just going Rebecca here. I just liked what I saw from him last fight. Arguably, he won that. I mean, just looking at the numbers straight up, and if I remember the fight correctly, I thought he had won that, or I had Chris Duncan, but I thought he lost. So I don't know. I just can't. You're picking against two losers. I'm just going to go with the guy that had a lot more output and a lot more success in his last fight. So I'm going Rebecca here, but I'm with you, Andrew. It's going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah, absolute banger coming up. I'm on the side of Ludovic Klein here as well, Andrew. And I like you touched on the damage aspect, and it's not only the amount of damage it's taken, it's how he wears it in his fights. It seems like every single fight, whether it be the Ferreira, which is the one, he gassed out in the third round, got in Ferreira, found the KO, and then between Miktabek, Oralbai, where he did end up winning the split decision, but, bloodied and battered. And then with this fight with Chris Duncan, Son, you touched on it, he had a lot more output, but in this fight game, it's now based on damage-based scoring, which ranks above all else, and the guy just seems like, once you pepper him with a few shots here, it's the eyes swollen shut immediately. He gets bloody, all that scar tissue opens up very easily. And I think he probably would have won that fight had he not been wearing the amount of damage he was. And then to rebound only a few months after that absolute war with Chris Duncan, that scar tissue, again, not enough time to heal properly. I think Ludovic Klein will just be showing less damage, even if the output on Mateusz Rebecki's side is a lot higher, or not even a lot higher, even slightly higher. I just think Ludovic Klein's being able to pick him apart, and I think that damage is going to wear on him over time. And if this does get to the judges' scorecards, I think you're going to see one guy who might have done a little bit more, you think, to win the fight, but he's going to look so much more bruised and battered. He just wears damage so horribly in his fights. And if this goes to a decision, I just have to side with the guy that's not going to be a complete mess at the end of the 15, even if he did look like the better fighter in the octagon.
Yeah, I was trying to think about which avenue I'd take to start up my segment here of talking about Ludovic Klein versus Mateusz Rebecki. And first off, I guess really Ludovic Klein has been in there with the better guys now, I guess you can say, after that fight with Mateusz Gamrot especially. And outside of that, Rebecki just does not have good fight IQ, man. I mean, I guess that's why he's so exciting, because he just walks straight forward like a zombie and just takes damage no matter what. And I don't want to side with the guy who just has the lack thereof of fight IQ. He just wants to put on a show, which I respect, but he gasses out. Optically, it does not look good. He takes a lot of damage when you're gassed and your face is beat in. You don't look good, my man. And Ludovic Klein has been in there with some very high-level guys, and I expect Ludovic Klein to pick up right where he was at before that Mateusz Gamrot loss and pick up a nice win here at UFC 321. And now moving on to the middleweight division, we have a matchup here between Ikram Aliskerov and Jung Young Park. Aliskerov comes in as a minus 260 favorite, and Ikram was a guy with only 2 professional losses, one of which being to Khamzat Chimaev pre-UFC and the other being to Robert Whittaker not too long back. The thing with him is he just does not have many good wins. And on the other side of that, you have Jung Young Park, who is a durable veteran. We saw his durability on full display in his last fight, where he was able to take that knee to the head. He had that 2-point deduction. And Son, my question for you will be, how do you break down this fight, and which side are you siding with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the odds kind of speak for themselves, and I, for once agree with the odds here. I think Aliskerov's the clear favorite, at least in my eyes. The way he handled himself in that Muniz fight, coming back from that Robert Whittaker loss by KO, which was pretty brutal. I mean, not brutal, but obviously, you get knocked out in the first round. It's never a good look. And then going back and getting that one basically as a buzzer beater against Andre Muniz, I think that aged really well. Another thing to note, Park Jun Young lost to Andre Muniz not too long ago, which definitely doesn't really look good. So I think it's just pretty straightforward. I'm hoping Aliskerov can get a finish here, but like you said, Park Jung Young's pretty durable, so I wouldn't expect him to get out of there too soon.
Yeah, in my eyes, it's the same thing, Son. It's like Ikram Aliskerov's still a very exciting prospect. I mean, he kind of just got thrown in. He had to fill a main card spot I forget who Robert Whittaker was supposed to face in the main event. Was it Khamzat Chimaev?
It was Khamzat.
It was Khamzat, and Khamzat dropped out. They were supposed to be on the same card, and then Ikram Aliskerov just kind of got thrown into a main event, with his third fight in the UFC against such a game veteran, former champion, and Robert Whittaker. Nothing to be ashamed about in that loss. He gets caught. And then, he comes back and has this bounce back win. And then in terms of Jung Young Park, just pretty much up and down career. Will string a few together, then lose, string a few together, then lose. And I don't see this being any different here, whether it's by decision or even, by finish. It comes down, the wrestling's there. Jung Young Park has, some pretty crappy submissions, is no slouch on the ground whatsoever. But I think Ikram Aliskerov is just a level above in all aspects here. And I expect him to get this one comfortably. The only way he's lost in his last two fights were by KO. It's both to uppercut. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think Jung Young Park's going to have that sneaky uppercut through the guard in his bag for this fight, but Ikram Aliskerov should get this one done, especially in Abu Dhabi.
I loved San's point. To me, the fight I was worried about for Aliskerov was the last fight against Muniz. Muniz is crafty. He's never a guy that's jumped off the page to me. He's lost to Brendan Allen. Was one of the more underwhelming ones, but to me, to bounce back like that again after another brutal knockout that basically looked the same as when he got knocked out by Chimaev. I'll never forget two things about Aliskerov. The first was Chimaev has said full stop. He said this before the Duplessis fight. The best guy, they said, who's the best guy you fought? Was it Whittaker? He said Aliskerov by far, Brave or whatever Russian promotion they fought in. He's like, that was the guy who I was most worried about on paper, has the most physical attributes. I saw Aliskerov live. Phil Hawes is a guy I've known for a while, just blow through Phil Hawes. It was one of the more brutal knockouts I've seen live. He's dangerous everywhere. I love Park, Iron Turtle, one of the best nicknames in the sport, pound for pound. But I'm still really high on Aliskerov. I think he's a dark horse for middleweight. Middleweight, bottom of that top 15 is very open. Aliskerov has been booked against Paulo Costa. Costa pulled out of that. I would pick Aliskerov against a lot of those guys just because I think he's so dangerous. That flying knee knockout he landed against Warley Alves was pretty sick too. So I'm going Aliskerov by finish. It sucks because I like Iron Turtle, but I'm still very high on Aliskerov, and I was impressed with how he bounced back after getting knocked out again.
It's funny you mentioned the Aliskerov knockout on Phil Hawes. We were there. Zach and I were there as well. We saw that live at the Prudential Center. Very sick.
Yes, sir.
That it was. But going back to this fight, I think you guys kind of took all the words out of my mouth. I think every single dot note here I have has been read. So with all that being said, I will also be siding with Ikram Aliskerov here. Jung Young Park has just lost to a lot worse of competition. Like you touched on there, San. I don't see Ikram Aliskerov dropping this one, but Jung Young Park is durable. And if this fight were to go the distance, I am curious to see what Ikram Aliskerov looks like at the end of 3 rounds. But that's about all I'll take away from this one. Now, moving on, this is an actual banger here. We have Narsat Hakparast taking on Quillan Salkilt here. The prospect. Hakparast is coming off a pair of controversial wins, with the last of which being against Esteban Ribovics. That one, I clearly thought Ribovics won the fight, but I'm not going to go back to that one. I'm a Ribovics guy, and I don't really want to get too ticked off here while talking about Hakparast. Now, Salkild is looking to improve to 3-0 now in the UFC. Ryan, are you kicking this one off? I lost track where I'm at here.
I believe I am.
So I believe it is. So, Ryan, the question for you will Salkild continue his momentum and improve to 4-0 here in the UFC?
Like I said, it's the same thing that Jose Delgado and the Wood situation said. I think the train stops here. Nasrat Hakparast is very game, especially when you talk about Quillan Salkild. He can do it all. He throws bombs on the feet, and then he can mix in the takedowns and the grappling very well. But too soon, man. In terms of a guy like Hakparast, who's had 10 plus fights in the UFC, I want to say, has seen it all. Still very young at 30 years old, entering his prime, and I just can't place my faith in a guy who's fought Anshul Jubilee and Yanel Ashmuz. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you compare resumes here. One jumps off the page to you, and the other one doesn't. I will say too, the judges seem to love the guy. He has that Amian Zahabi effect when it comes to seeing judges' scorecards. And the other thing for me is, I was not impressed with Kun Salkild's win over Emil Ashmuz. It seemed like he kind of gassed in the third. Meanwhile, you fight a guy like Esteban Ribovics who has cardio for days. And while I did think he lost that fight and it went to a split decision, he was keeping up the pace in that fight with a guy in Esteban Ribovics who we saw at UFC Noche when he fought, starts with a Z, Daniel Zellhuber, where he was able to come back in the third round and throw like a 70-piece combination in the third after fighting a pretty high-volume striking 2 rounds before that. So I think cardio is going to be the main factor. I see Nasrat Haqparast running away with this one in the third, if Quinn Salkild starts slowing down like he did in his last fight.
Unranked lightweight, man. It's kind of the same every time. It's just total bangers. Shout out to Prudential Center. Saw Salkild's last fight against Inoue Ashmuz. Was not blown away where I thought I was going to be. I really like Nasrat Haqparast. I've seen a lot of people taking Quillin this week, but I'm going to go Haqparast by decision as well, actually. To me, the fights that stood out are actually the 2 fights that he's lost in the past 5 years, and that was to King Green and Dan Hooker. The King Green fight, I think, is a little bit more puzzling, but that Dan Hooker fight, Dan Hooker took that fight on like 3 days' notice. You'll remember he flew. It was like COVID. He had to fly over. He was in quarantine for like a month after that fight or whatever. But just the ability to go a hard 3 rounds with Dan Hooker, and I think he picked up the first round in that fight as well. I'm always really impressed by Haqparast's boxing and his distance management on the feet has always been something that stands off the page for me. I think Salkid has the power advantage, but I'm just not sure he's going to be able to get to Haqparast. So I'm thinking Haqparast by decision, but kind of like the Ludovic Klein-Rebecki fight, like these are just 2 bangers at lightweight. Fight could end at any minute, has war potential. I think there's a reason you saw that this fight wasn't even booked 2 weeks ago, and it's now the featured prelim on the card. UFC feels pretty strongly about both those guys. Love this fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a banger. I will be siding with Salkild here, though, because I think he's just he's had a hilarious first 2 fights. He's really, the white man's fighter. First fight, he comes in and beats up an Indian guy, and then he comes back and beats up an Israeli guy. So I think it's just great for him to be, going in there and beating up different minority groups. So I think he's going to do it again this weekend. He's like a Drew Dober against black guys. So I don't know. I can just see Salkild win this one this weekend. I love the guy. I think he's hilarious. I want him to keep this funny ass career going with just like seemingly fighting, only minorities, which I think is fucking crazy. So let's go Salkild, man.
Yeah, man. When I really go down to break down this fight, at the end of the day, Nasrat Haqparast is just more battle tested against the better opponents there, and I think he should be the better striker here opposed to Quillin Salkild, while Salkild will hold the grappling advantage. I'm not sure how much he'll be able to impose his grappling here in the octagon. And what really stuck out to me, Ryan, that you touched on is just he looked like he really gassed out in round 3 in his last fight. And against Nasrat Haqparast, he will not be able to do that and win the decision. I just don't think that's possible. So I'm going to go with Haqparast via decision here. But if Salkild's able to shore up on his gas tank or really impose his grappling, I could see him definitely pulling out that fight. And now moving on to the main card here, we have a toss-up between Alexander Rakic and Azamat Murzakanov. Rakic is coming in on a 3-fight losing streak, although the loss to Jan Blachowicz has a little bit of an asterisk next to it due to the unfortunate injury. Opposing him is the heavy-handed, undefeated Murzakanov, who really is just not the most active here. And Andrew, I'll let you kick this one off. Do you see Murzakanov putting out Alexander Rakic and finding his way back into the win column?
It's so frustrating. I've picked Rakic. I picked him to beat Magomedov Ankalaev last year. I took him. He had like bunch plus money in that. I thought it was a sexy pick. I'm always impressed by Rakic on paper. Always. He is long. He is strong. His knockout of Jimmy Manuwa is like a top 5 greatest knockout from the all-time in the UFC aesthetic-wise. And kind of like you said, 3 losses in a row, 3 losses to former champs. And so to me, they're not bad losses per se. And he was winning that fight against Jan Blachowicz until he blew out his knee. The frustrating thing for me is where it seems like some guys aren't good in the athletic standpoint, but find a way to win. I think Rakic is the exact opposite. He looks so good in the first round against Yuri Prochazka, gets UFC 300, and then gets put away. He looked very good against Magomedov Ankalaev early in that fight and then just doesn't throw the output. He doesn't win fights. And to me, that has just been so challenging against a guy in Azamat Murzakanov who's not great, who's I think best win is probably I don't even know, probably Alonzo Menafield. But to me, the problem with Rakic, and I'm about to pick him again. The problem with Rakic, and the thing that's frustrating, it's like a drug you can't stop coming back to, is he doesn't find ways to win fights. Alternatively, the worry for me is Murzakinov's reach, and I think sometimes he is too reliant on that knockout. He has had some sloppy performances early. I think Rakic is going to get back in the win column here. I think he wins by decision. I think he picks up a great round one, picks up the second, and then maybe looks kind of shit in the third, but I think he'll figure it out. You know, if he loses, I'm probably going to pick him till the end of his career just because I think he's so athletic, so strong, so big for 205. But yeah, we'll see. Murzakanov is very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, not Murzakanov, but Rakic really worries me. Just in how his career has been. Obviously, he's lost to some really good guys, but it's almost like now, like in 2025, seeing how great all these guys were, it almost seems, kind of undeserved. Really, he started fighting, real, not that anybody else wasn't. He had a Oezdemir back in 2019. But after that, he really hasn't fought anybody up until he fought Anthony Smith in 2020, which he won in decision, which, is decently impressive, but that's also a long time ago. Goes on to beat Thiago Santos in 2021 by decision as well. And then kind of just gets all these really good fighters thrown his way. Jan Blachowicz, gets knocked out in the third round. Then he gets Magomed Ankalaev and Yuri Prochazka. Two things that you mentioned a little bit, Andrew, that I did see him both of his last fights with Ankalaev and Prochazka, is he just kind of gassed out and really stopped looking good pretty much right after that first round. He kind of just lets other guys get their rhythm under them before he gets his own rhythm. And I just can't trust that against a guy like Murzakanov that's so dangerous on the feet and can just really put anybody out. Rakic definitely gets caught. We saw him get caught a few times. That Yuri Prochazka fight obviously ended in that knockout. So I just see a similar fate going up against a dangerous striker like Murzakanov, who's got some very heavy hands and is on a pretty good knockout streak right now. I think 2 or 3 knockouts in a row. So I got Murzakanov probably about knockout again.
Yeah, I'm going with Rakic here. Andrew, I loved every point you touched on, especially the athleticism of Rakic and what you see and what jumps out to you when you watch him fight in the octagon. And the thing is, and so you touched on it too as well, is 6.5-inch reach advantage for a guy like Murzakanov who relies on that one-shot power to pretty much win or stumble his opponents and get his decision wins, just to crack guys. I see Rakic being quicker and being able to avoid that power shot. Whether this goes to a decision or if Rakic can find, a finish here. In that Yuri Prochazka fight for the first round, I just think he got demoralized in that fight. When you're throwing and you're hitting a guy in front of you with bomb after bomb in the first round, and you have Yuri Prochazka just doing samurai shit and moving his head and going like, woo, and you're hitting him with your best shots and he's just not going away because, he has a chin of fucking vibranium. It's going to be demoralizing, and you're going to gas out. You hit the guy with your best shots for 5 minutes, 7.5 minutes, and then he finally turns the tide. But I can't trust Azamat Murzakanov with that such a big reach disadvantage and with a guy as athletic as Rakic to be able to find that shot. I think Rakic should be able to, I'll eat my words if he doesn't, but I think he should be able to coast his way with this one and just avoid those power shots. He's good enough to do it on paper. We've seen him do it in the octagon before, and I think he turns the tide and gets off that 3-fight loss streak.
Yeah, I think that was a great breakdown there that you had, Ryan, and I'm also going to side with Alexander Rakic here. At the end of the day, he has fought the best of the best. He looked great against Yuri up until he didn't, which seems to be the case with just about everyone outside of Peloton. And Rakic looked good against Ankalaev, especially in that first round. He took that first round there against Ank and then ended up giving up that fight. And I guess the common theory, or the common not denominator, but the common theory, what keeps on happening, Jesus Christ, man, I can't even think of what to say, is he does seem to just kind of gas out a little bit after round one, which is a bit scary against a big power puncher like Murzakanov. But who's to say that Murzakanov would not gas out as well? Those punches may not be hitting just as hard rounds 2, rounds 3. I'm going to side with Rakic here. I hope that big bomb does not get through and Rakic can get back in the win column, and we have another exciting light heavyweight there. But moving on to the heavyweight division, we have a fight here between Alexander Volkov, who just should not be fighting in this fight. Let's get that right here. He got robbed against Ciryl Gane, but he is taking on Jailton Almeida. Almeida is the 2-1 favorite here over Alexander Volkov, and we're back to the classic matchup of striker versus grappler here. Volkov has looked great recently, although he did lose to Ciryl Gane, like I touched on. And fun fact here about Jailton Almeida, a lot of people think he is a black belt. That is not true. He is currently a brown belt. But back to the fight here. San, will you be siding with the striker or the grappler here in this matchup?
Oh, man, I hate this because I really like both guys. And like you touched on, obviously, Volkov, I think it's honestly pretty crazy that they got him on the same card as Gane. I think that's extremely, disrespectful. But I think I hate to say it, but I think Volkov wins. I'm going back and forth in this in my head. And obviously, I'm a big Jailton Almeida guy. And I think 9 times out of 10, I would usually side with the submission artist. Especially being that big and that, strong in that division against, a guy that's basically almost 7 feet tall, it looks like. But Volkov's so good, man. I mean, he's still really, really good. He's 36 years old. I think he's, right in his prime years, especially at that heavyweight bout. Beat Ciryl Gane, who's a very decent striker, and even taking Pavlovich to decision in a time that, he just hadn't been taking anybody to decision. So I think it's pretty impressive. And I got Volkov again. And some people are just going to say, oh, well, he can't, he's not really a wrestler. He's not really a wrestler. If we look at the Ciryl Gane fight, he had 3 out of 4 takedowns attempted actually land, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, Gane's not the best wrestler, but it is impressive. So I think I got Volkov here. I think he's just going to be able to put him out on the feet. Maybe not knock him out, but definitely outclass him on the feet. He 100% has that kickboxing. Plus, he's got a sick-ass back tat, which I'm a big fan of. So I'm going Volkov here.
Yeah, this one was pretty hard for me. And what I kept coming back to was this idea is right. I thought so highly of Jailton Almeida. I still pretty much do. He's a. I'm blanking on like the words here, but he's like almost a unicorn in that heavyweight division with the way he fights now. He's almost like a Merab, where he's shooting 10 takedowns in a fight at the heavyweight division, which is a lot harder. Nothing to Merab's like 50 against Petr Yan, but you don't really see a guy like that like in the heavyweight division nowadays, just spamming takedowns, and landing them. But what I always go back to now, whenever I have to look at a Jailton Almeida fight, is that loss to Curtis Blades, where he kind of just. I don't want to say gave up. Curtis Blades threw some mean shots there, but the fight IQ to not, get off that takedown once you start eating elbows really bothers me. And Volkov, while he has some pretty gnarly submission losses, especially the likes of Tom Aspinall with that arm lock, has also done some pretty impressive things. It's not every day you see an Ezekiel choke. Granted, it was against Tai Tuivasa, who there's one thing he can't do is grapple, but I have to go with the guy in Volkov who he's proven more to me. I like him more. I really can't trust Jailton Almeida for anything after that Curtis Blades loss. He's bounced back and he's had 2 pretty decent wins, one by sub, one by KO in his last one. But I don't know, man. There's something about Jailton Almeida that just makes me want to go against him every time I see him in an octagon now. So I'm going with Volkov here. I think he gets it done. I thought he looked phenomenal in the Ciryl Gane fight, night and day difference from the first time they fought in the UFC. And I guess another thing to note is if Dana ever looks you in the eyes and says, we're going to take care of you, that was bullshit, don't listen to him because you're going to be fighting on the hottest prospects in your division come after that.
It's not the first one to happen to either. Never forget, Danny Ige takes fight on 3 hours notice against Diego Lopez, turns around, gets Lerone Murphy in Abu Dhabi. So not doing any favors for him there. It's tough for me. This fight is tough. I think it's tough because I think both guys in where my question marks would be for them 2 years ago, I don't have as much anymore. I think Volkov's ground game, offensively grappling, has improved so much. I was impressed with the takedowns in the Gane fight. And Tuivasa's ground game isn't good, but Volkov dominated him on the ground. Beat him up before Ezekiel choked him. And then alternatively, my biggest concern with Jailton Almeida is when you have a heavyweight who can't finish fights. He basically sat on Derek Lewis for 25 minutes. It was one of the worst fights I've ever watched in the UFC. But since that loss in Miami to Blades, I think he's turned a corner a little bit. I think he got bigger, which was my first concern with him, right? He was a 205 guy all the way through and then was just kind of fighting at heavyweight because, heavyweights are miserable. And so he was like 230, 232. He's now 245, 250. He looks much bigger, which was my first concern with him. And the second one is he's finishing fights. He beat the hell out of Alexander Romanov last year. I think it was in Newark. And then he looked really good at the beginning of this year with Sergey Spivak as well. So I'm taking Almeida. I actually think he's going to finish Volkov. Volkov's like 55 pro fights or some crazy number of pro fights. 40 was it 49 pro fights? Like that's a lot of pro fights. I think there's a lot of miles on him, but it's tough, right? Because I was so impressed with the way Volkov pieced up Sergey Pavlovich, who's a guy I still rate really highly, at heavyweight. But I'm going to take Almeida by round 2 sub. I just think the size, the offensive pressure he's going to have on the ground, and then just kind of that submission threat for Almeida is impressive for me. But I would not be shocked at all if Volkov just picks him apart on the feet and gets himself his deserved title shot.
Yeah, I'm also going to side with Jailton Almeida here. And, well, actually, before you even talk about that, Andrew, you pointed out the number of heavyweight fights that Alexander Volkov has had in its 49 professional fights. And one thing I do want to point out about that is he's only been knocked out twice in 49 professional heavyweight MMA fights. That is absolutely absurd. Hats off to Alexander Volkov because that's an insane statistic. But back to the fight here, I do have Alexander Volkov, and my main reason being is, not Volkov. I do have Jailton Almeida, and my main reason being here is because you look at Alexander Volkov's last fight against Ciryl Gane, and while he did look improved in the grappling department, Ciryl Gane was able to offensively grapple with Alexander Volkov in that fight too. He's able to have multiple takedowns. He's able to have success with the control time. And if Ciryl Gane's doing that to you, man, what's Jailton Almeida going to do? Because that's a night and day difference as far as the ground games go. I see Jailton Almeida being able to take down Alexander Volkov. He'll probably have 6, 7, 8 takedowns this fight. He'll have 10, 11, 12 minutes of control time. And I don't see Volkov putting him out in the minutes that he is on the feet. So I'm going to side with Jailton Almeida here. Yeah. And now moving on here, we do have a fine bantamweight bout here, and one with a ton of implications, and that is Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Mario Bautista. The winner of this fight likely to probably get the next crack there at Merab Dvalishvili after he fights Piotr Jan in December. Mario Bautista has been on a tear, taking out the likes of Jose Aldo and Patchy Mix in his last 2. Umar Nurmagomedov looking to rebound after his loss to Merab Dvalishvili earlier this year. Ryan, Umar is a minus 590 favorite. Stiff. What do you make of those odds, and who do you have winning this fight?
I mean, dude, not to count out Mario Bautista. He's a very game fighter, but when you stack resumes and you look at the fight styles, I mean, somewhat similar, but when you look at Umar Nurmagomedov's resume and you compare it, we'll just go through his last 2 fights. Loses unanimous decision to Merab Dvalishvili. You could argue, I know there's some arguments there that he won rounds 1, 2, and 3, and then Merab showboated his way to a decision win after that, but also broke his hand in that fight, whatever. Then you have Corey Sandhagen. Those 2 alone, and then you have Patchy Mix and a 40-year-old Jose Aldo on the side of Mario Bautista, he brought to a decision, and then Patchy Mix we also brought to a decision. Patchy Mix was this highly rated prospect coming out of Bellator. He's now 0-2 in the UFC, and it's just like some of these wins for Mario Bautista, especially putting on these, I'll hug you against the cage, clinch you against the cage and ride out and just coast to a decision victory. It's not going to work for a guy like Umar Nurmagomedov, who can pretty much do it all. Comes out of that Dagestani wrestling camp with Islam and Habib and all those world famous grapplers. And then you have the striking ability to match that, where he can throw pretty much anything. Crazy knockout over Raoni Bacelis, just caught him with like a really short left hook. You could see there's some power there. There's some unnatural power in the hands of Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't agree with the odds necessarily. I do think Mario Bautista is a very game fighter when he gets in that octagon, but I see him being just a little bit starstruck in this one. He kind of was against Jose Aldo a little bit. When you get in a guy with like Umar Nurmagomedov, I think it's just going to be like this holy shit moment. I'm fighting Umar Nurmagomedov. And another thing to note is if that fight does go to a decision in Abu Dhabi, who do you think's taking it here, especially if it's close? You see it all the time. I mean, who realistically do you think's winning a split decision again in Abu Dhabi between these two people? I'm siding with Umar. I think the line's pretty egregious. I think it doesn't give Mario Bautista enough credit to the fighter that he is with that line, but I still do see Umar Nurmagomedov winning this one comfortably.
Basically agree with everything Ryan said. I was stunned as well when I saw the line, just because I thought Mario Bautista was going to be like the sneaky pick on the card that people are like, oh, like if you know, you know. The tough thing for me is two things. One, I have not actually been blown away by any of Mario Bautista's performances. I thought he looked good against Mix. I went back and watched that fight. It's a very simple striking approach. It's 1-2s and leg kicks. And, Sean Strickland won a title on 1-2s and leg kicks. But to me, like, I wasn't blown away with his striking. If Umar fought Merab again today, I would pick Umar straight. I just think he provides – I picked Umar to be champ by the end of the year. Like, I just think Umar does so many things well. I think his range management is so impressive. Those first 2 rounds – I picked Corey Sandhagen to beat Merab too, so I'm a bit of a Merab hater. But I just thought those first 2 rounds when Umar kept Merab, on the back foot, Merab couldn't get in close. He looked like he was going to win the belt easily, and then he ran out of gas, and Merab did what Merab does best. But I just think the buzz around the rematch, the camp that Umar comes in, his brother Usman just got that big win 2 weeks ago against Paul Hughes. I just think there's too many things against Mario Bautista. If we're sitting here on Monday and Mario wins like a close 29-28, and is fighting for the title, I guess I wouldn't be stunned. But to me, I just think Umar does too many things well. But first loss of his career, has to bounce back. It's always a tough fight for guys. We'll see. I'm picking Umar by decision. But yeah, man, people are sleeping on Mario Bautista. I guess we're sleeping on Mario Bautista too. But we'll see, man. I just think it's a credit to how good Umar is.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually very excited for this fight because I've had my pick for a long time, and I hate to say it, but I'm going with Mario Bautista here. Actually, I love to say it. Mario Bautista just really plays down or plays up or down to the level of anybody that's across the octagon with him. Obviously, we see a lot of decisions. It's kind of like similar to, you look at Bilal Muhammad's record, and you see a lot of decisions. That's kind of what we get with Mario Bautista, which is kind of where a lot of that hate stems from. And you are right, Andrew. I mean, it is a very simple striking game plan. But, as everybody says, if it's not really broke, you don't really have to fix it. And Umar Nurmagomedov is a guy that, sure, he's great. He's awesome, but I don't know. There's just something about him that is just like not there. I think just the whole being part of Khabib's camp is kind of just like a big, green light for most people. But for whatever reason, Umar Nurmagomedov just doesn't, light that for me. I don't think he would beat Merab in a rematch, for example. I think Merab is miles ahead of anybody on that level of fighting. So I'm just going Mario Bautista here. I think he's really quick. I think he has very good distance management. I think he's a pretty big guy too. I actually, now I look at it, they're the same height and everything, but I just think Mario Bautista's, yeah, I don't know. I just think he has something about him that for me, it's like a weird, like plot armor type of thing. It's very strange, but for whatever reason, I've thought Mario Bautista was going to win this fight ever since they announced it. So I'm going Mario Bautista here to shock the world. Another thing, I hate the odds, and when I really hate the odds, I kind of just have to, say fuck you to DraftKings or whoever it is, and just slap down on that underdog. So I'm going Mario Bautista here. Is he going to win? Likely, probably not. I mean, I think everything's against him. That being it's in Abu Dhabi, and he's such a big underdog. But I don't know. When you get in that cage, it's kind of you're not in Vegas anymore. You're in the cage fighting. And that's kind of a guy that Mario Bautista has been throughout his career. A lot of upset wins, at least in the fans' eyes.
Son, you are correct. They will not be in Vegas. They will be in Abu Dhabi, which does favor Umar Nurmagomedov. I'm sorry I had to say it. But no, when I was writing down like my predictions and kind of going through my notes throughout all the fights here, all I wrote here for this fight was just Umar. I think Umar is better everywhere this fight could possibly go. And you kind of look at Mario Bautista's last few fights, and I think they were very favorable for him. You look at that fight with Jose Aldo. Where did he win that fight? In the clinch. Mario Bautista is insanely strong in the clinch, very good clinch game. And then you fast forward to Patchy Mix. Patchy Mix was known as this fantastic grappler, which he 100% is. But you go back and watch all of his fights, and you see how he initiates his grappling, and he does so in the clinch. He's not very good offensively wrestling. He can't take you down from the open. So then you look at his fight with Mario Bautista. Well, Mario Bautista was able to keep it standing because Patchy Mix can't take you down from the open, and Mario Bautista is so strong in the clinch. We saw Patchy Mix get in the clinch with him, had zero success. He shot one attempt there. Mario Bautista stuffed it, and that was just kind of it. And Patchy Mix, his striking is very rudimentary. So Mario Bautista was able to win that fight, like you touched on there, Andrew, just off those 1-2s and the kicks. So, yeah, there's that. And that's not going to win you a fight here against Umar Nurmagomedov, who's just such a versatile striker. And then also with Jose Aldo, he was just pushing Jose Aldo up into the clinch, and Jose Aldo he wasn't going to take him down there. I don't think you're just going to bully Umar Nurmagomedov in the clinch. And if you do, like, you're probably going to get dumped. He's going to trip you. He's going to find something sleek. He's going to get the fight down to the ground. That's not going to work there. So with Umar Nurmagomedov holding the grappling and the striking advantages by as much as I think he does, I just really do not see where Mario Bautista wins this fight. But the odds are fucking egregious, bro. Like minus 590. Come on. At least give me a minus 300.
I've got one question for you guys, and I'm curious. If you had to pick one person who's going to beat Merab today in bantamweight, who would you pick?
Umar. Umar matches up perfectly well because there's really only two ways to beat Merab. It's either you knock him out and you finish him, or you have to have such a strong sprint through 3 rounds where you win the first 3 and you're able to give up the next 2. I think Umar Nurmagomedov can win those first 3. I mean, he won the first 2. He was the closest to do so. I think if he's able to just kind of build up his cardio a little more to sprint through 3, he can edge out a decision against Merab. And I don't see anyone else that really has the skills to match up and be able to do so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's Umar, I think, is like the only guy right now that has a chance or has the best chance. But I just don't see it happening, at least not this year or even, a year from now. I have a very tough time seeing anybody beat Merab unless, you just put Umar in front of him, 5 times in a row. Obviously, I think he's going to end up winning one of them, but you can only give a rematch so many times.
I don't know, man. There's one bantamweight I always love watching. I think this has like one of the most versatile duffel bags in mixed martial arts. It's Petr Yan. I mean, that guy can seemingly do it all, like between like the beautiful Otsugari trips and, just kind of dictating fights. And he's just a little slow in terms of, getting his data and, getting some knowledge on his opponent. He's a little lackluster, not lackluster, I want to say, but, he takes it slow for 1 or 2 rounds, and then really turns it on. You see it in pretty much all of his fights, but I don't think you can argue that guy is like one of the most diverse when it comes to striking and grappling in MMA, especially at that bantamweight division. I every time I watch a Petr Yan fight, I think I'm watching like poetry in motion. So for me, it has to be Petr. I know they're fighting in December. I love Merab. I love them both. I think if there's one guy that can mix it up enough to get a W over Merab, it is Petr Yan. I know he had some I think he broke his hand, as Zach was alluding to when we last talked about that, going into their fight. But the only other thing is when Merab shoots 49 takedowns in 25 minutes, and has you clinched up, only landed a handful of them, but still. I think if Petr Yan can, just find some success on the feet, and stuff enough takedowns and avoid that pressure, I think he could beat Merab in a rematch. We'll see come December. I kind of hope he gets it done, but I love Merab enough. I love him as a champion, and I just love watching the guy fight. And I think he mixes it up well enough, and he's dangerous enough on the feet to catch Merab. So for me, it's got to be Petr Yan.
I love that take. Sorry, just to say one more thing. Does Pantoja have a better chance to beat Merab than Yan or Umar?
I would take Pantoja. over Petr to beat Merab, but I would take Umar over Pantoja. It's such a, I don't know, man. It's tough kind of raining on Ryan's parade a little bit, but I just don't see this rematch between Petr and Merab going any differently than the first one did, outside of like Petr being able to use his right hand more. But I still think he just gets wrestle fucked for 25, as does everyone. And I think just because Merab's not a small 135er, I think Pantoja going up, it's tough. Like Merab's so big, so it's a tough clash of battles there. And then I also do think that the traditional like wrestling style is very tough for that like jiu-jitsu grappling. So I would lean Merab in that fight too, but it's interesting. I'm more curious about Merab versus Volk than Merab versus Pantoja, to be honest. But let's spin it forward to the women's strawweight, vacant women's strawweight championship of the world. We have Virna Jandiroba at plus 140, taking on Mackenzie Dern at minus 180. The last time these ladies met was back in 2020 in a 3-round bout in which Dern initiated really the only grappling exchanges and ended up winning the fight. Not that she had success with the grappling, but she initiated the exchanges there. Speaking of the grappling, both ladies are very, very competent on the ground. So, Andrew, my question for you will be, do you anticipate this fight playing out on the feet, and which side will you be going with?
Yeah, this is tough, man, because here's the problem. To me, the fight that this feels like is UFC 297 co-main event was Mayra Bueno Silva against Raquel Pennington for the vacant bantamweight belt. And that fight was awful. But the reason that fight was I didn't think had any luster behind it is because no one feels like this is actually the best 115, or in that case, 135-pound woman in the world. Like, I just think you're going to have a hard time arguing that when you got Zhang Weili, who's looked as good as she has. So I hate that she had to vacate this title. I hate that it's for a vacant title. So I just think it's losing luster because of that. On the X's and O's, I'm really surprised by this line. Like, really surprised, actually. I just think the way Virna Jandiroba has looked, the way she beat Yan Xiaonan in Miami this year, who is someone I rate very highly and I think would be very competitive against Mackenzie Dern. I actually think might have a win over Mackenzie Dern. I'm not sure, though. I'm really surprised that Dern is coming in as the favorite. I understand she won the first fight. I watched it back. She pulled guard basically in that fight to initiate the grappling, which was a bit puzzling. But just the win streak for me for Virna Jandiroba jumps off the record. She was the clear number one contender. If Weili was going to defend her title, she was going to be the clear next person. Angela Hill, Marina Rodriguez, Lupi Godinez, Amanda Lemos, Yan Xiaonan are all top 5 or are all top 15 ranked strawweights. I've been really impressed with Virna Jandiroba. I think Mackenzie Dern probably has more finishing potential. I was really impressed with the way she looked against Amanda Ribas in that first main event this year. But losing to Andrade, she got the hell beat out of her against Andrade in New York. She got beat by Amanda Lemos. She's just lost to that upper echelon of 115 where Virna hasn't. So I'm taking Virna. I think plus 135 is just wild odds for this. So I'm taking Virna by decision. And I think underdog money, I'm going to take that every day.
Yeah, I'm 100% there with you. I mean, I absolutely love Mackenzie Dern. I wish she had a fight every weekend. I wish I could watch her fight every weekend. But unfortunately, that's not really what's going to win you the fight at the end of the day. Jandiroba is fucking very impressive, bro. You see in her grappling exchanges with Amanda Lemos, who is a very good grappler and striker for that matter. As well, she had some crazy, scrambles and reversals in that fight that just got resurfaced this week that I was extremely impressed with. And then beating pretty much the same competition that Mackenzie Dern's been against. But Mackenzie Dern I feel like she just hasn't been there in those big moments, especially, against that upper echelon, like you mentioned, Andrew. Wins against similar people. But I think back on that Ribas fight, and you even look at the stats here. On the feet, she was landing less. On the takedown, she was landing less. So it was kind of just like almost a fluke submission, not a full fluke submission. Obviously, she got it. It was a pretty decently even fight. But she definitely didn't have the edge in that one. And then kind of comes back and gets that submission. It's a great win, but I just don't think that's going to be able to transfer over to Jandiroba. She won't be able to fall back on that safety net of submissions against a lady like Virna. So I got the underdog as well. I think it's, I was extremely surprised with those odds as well. I thought she was going to be almost a minus 200. I think out of the two, only one of them exactly deserved to be challenging for that title in their next fight, and it wasn't Mackenzie Dern. So for as much as I love watching Mackenzie Dern get out there, and I love seeing her on TV, I just can't pick her this weekend. I don't think she wins it. I think Jandiroba is too tough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with both of you. I mean, granted, Mackenzie Dern does have a win over Virna Jandiroba, earlier in their careers, but when you just watch the progression of their careers, one just seems to have evolved light years ahead of the other. Virna Jandiroba is just strung up, whether it goes to decision, not maybe like the most finishes, when she's reached that top 15, just one sub, one finish win in the last 3 to 4 years here for her, but she's beat the cream of the crop. She rightfully just grinded her way to the number one contender in the world for that strawweight title. Like Andrew said, she would be fighting Zhang Weili next. How that fight goes, I'd still probably have to pick Zhang Weili. I think she's just light years ahead of anyone in that division, just in terms of being able to do it all. But Mackenzie Dern, when it comes to the limelight, like loses to Amanda Lemos, Jessica Andrade, same way. It's like when you get to those like high caliber fights, it seemed like Mackenzie Dern was always one shot away from the title for the past 3 or 4 years and just hasn't been able to get it done. And seemingly undeserved for a title shot here to fill in a vacant spot. But I do also kind of get it, considering that, both of them have wins over Yan Jianan and then like a couple of the girls, here in the top 5 or the top 4. But just looking at it, and when you look at them side by side, Virna Jandiroba looks left and right at the same time. Mackenzie Dern, very good to look at. And I just have to take the one that looks meaner, angrier, is trying to avenge a loss, and has just shown elevations in her game every step of the way that she steps in, every time she steps into an octagon. For me, I'm shocked that this is that Virna Jandiroba is coming here as an underdog. That's very surprising. But then again, I think books don't really value women's fights the same way they do as men's in terms of line pricing. So I think this is a great one to take advantage of on Saturday. Does Mackenzie Dern have paths to victory? Yes, but I think Virna Jandiroba should neutralize all of those, and I think you're getting very good value. And I'd take that sooner rather than later, because I could see come Friday, Saturday afternoon, Virna being a slight favorite coming into it. So if you want to boost some parlays now, I'd take Virna Jandiroba immediately.
Yeah, boys, I'm going to be left out on an island here. I'm actually going to be siding with Mackenzie Dern. And first off, man, I mean, who would the UFC rather have as their champ? Probably Mackenzie Dern. That has to draw more eyes. I mean, come on now. But kind of moving on from that a little bit, I think Virna Jandiroba does struggle a little bit when she faces opponents with high level of grappling. A lot of the opponents she faced, when you have a high grappling advantage over them, are a little tentative on the feet. They're a little scared to engage with the striking, give up openings for your opponent to initiate the grappling. That's not going to be the case here with Mackenzie Dern. We saw that in her first fight. Virna Jandiroba, her losses come to the likes of Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Ribas, and there's another one along there that I'm missing. But when she does face an opponent that is able to match her in that grappling department, it does make the fight on the feet a bit more interesting there. And I think Mackenzie Dern has made a lot of improvements in her stand-up game, and I think her striking is pretty competent now. I'm curious really who the better grappler there is between Jandiroba and Mackenzie Dern, because they both are so damn good there in the grappling department. But I give a slight lean to Dern here. And with that being said, I will side with Mackenzie Dern. And now spinning it forward to the main event of the evening, we have Tom Aspinall as a minus 460 favorite over Ciryl Gane. Aspinall is looking to make his first defense as the UFC undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. I'm kind of curious on how they score that first title defense for Tom Aspinall, where Ciryl Gane will be making his third walk into the octagon, challenging for undisputed UFC gold. San, do you see this third walk going any different for Ciryl Gane?
Yeah, I don't. I think Ciryl Gane's got everything going against him right now. Obviously, he hasn't been great in the limelight. Second of all, he's French. That's a big negative there. And third, you're there against probably, the most mobile heavyweight ever. He's got to be. This dude's so quick. He's got hands faster than Pavlovich. He's got nasty jiu-jitsu that, tops Almeida's. He's kind of just an all-in-one guy. Put into a package that was sidelined, because of one or two injuries that kind of took him out of that spot, to run up and get the belt. So I think it was pretty obvious that at some point in Tom Aspinall's career, he was going to be a champion. We just didn't understand how good this guy was until we saw him get out there and just start sparking everybody in the first round. So I don't see this fight going any different. I don't think Ciryl Gane's hands are that good. Especially when he starts getting tired, he starts getting really sloppy. He starts getting very unimpressive. And then obviously we know how bad his wrestling is. I will say he has been working on his wrestling pretty much not strictly, but very, very heavily since his last loss, which, is great and all, but I just don't think you can ever make up for lost time on the grappling department when it comes to a guy like Tom Aspinall. You'll never be better than him. So Tom Aspinall, obviously, I think he's going to finish him in the first round. I think likely it'll be a knockout probably in the first half of that first round. It really shouldn't get down to the later rounds, especially, or the ground, especially when Tom Aspinall's had so much success on the feet. So I got Tom Aspinall first round knockout here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going Tom Aspinall here, and it's hard for me, right? Because when it comes to the heavyweight division, it's like there used to be 3 with Francis Ngannou, I guess 4 really, with John Jones and Francis Ngannou, in terms of like fighters on the roster, especially at the heavyweight division, which I said is very lackluster in talent. But like those are like the 4 guys that for the past 3 years outside of Francis Ngannou, got booted from the UFC, who impressed you every time that they fought. And then when you look, so Ciryl Gane, in terms of that heavyweight division is like, the cream of the crop. It will be Tom Aspinall's hardest fight. But then it's just like when you look at what Tom Aspinall has strung together in his tenure with the UFC, and it's just nothing short of absolutely ridiculous. Never seen a third round. Sub Berlovsky in the second, but shortest fight time in the UFC. Only spent 1 second on his back. 100% takedown accuracy. Finished every single fight he's been in. Goes out, loses to Curtis Blades, blows his knee out, then comes back and defends an interim title, which he shouldn't have been defending. Should have been for the Undisputed at that point against John Jones, but goes out and finishes Curtis Blade in a minute. It's something that we've never seen really, in the octagon from anyone in any single division. Is someone so dominant who's strung together such performances. And I'm going on the side of Tom Aspinall. And what I want, I think he beats him regardless, but what I want is for Tom Aspinall to beat Ciryl Gane more impressively than John Jones did, which was a very impressive win, getting him in the guillotine within 2.5 minutes of the first round. I almost need Tom Aspinall to beat Ciryl Gane in such a fashion that John Jones has no choice but to come out of retirement and fight this fucker for the belt at the White House come July. Because that's the fight as fans we got robbed for a 1.5 years with John Jones ducking. And it's the fight I need to see. And I think the only way that draws, I know John Jones has been talking about coming out of retirement, specifically for those special events as the White House card. The only person I'd only want to see him fight, fuck the Alex Pereira fight. I want to see him fight Tom Aspinall for the undisputed belt. I need Tom Aspinall to come out here and finish Ciryl Gane in about a minute and a half. And I think I think Tom Aspinall is capable of doing that. And I need him to do it. So I'm throwing all my chips in on Tom Aspinall getting this one out in under 60 seconds. Give it to me, please. I need it. I want to see that matchup at the White House. I'm all in on Tom Aspinall here.
It's tough. It's tough because I think Ryan's point is perfect, which is X's and O's on paper. I think Tom Aspinall is just better than Ciryl everywhere. I spent a lot of time trying to watch Tom Aspinall this week and try and find holes. I think his chin's up in the air too much. But the problem with me is where other guys at heavyweight can punish Tom, Cyryl's knockout power is just not there. It's non-existent. He knocks out Tuivasa after hitting him 150 times. He couldn't even put Spivak down, and he hit him like 100 times too. And so for me, like the hard thing on paper for this fight is I just don't know the path for Ciryl Gane. I truly don't know how he beats Tom Aspinall. I think the path is he chops away at the legs, like does a ton of body work, circles outside, kind of does what he did for the first 2 rounds against Francis, and then just kind of rides that and wins a decision. But with a lack of knockout power, not a great submission threat. He hasn't hit any submissions since really early in his UFC career. The thing I struggle with Ciryl Gane is just how does he win the fight? Because I agree, like he's really fast. Technically, he's excellent. And my other worry with Gane is I just think sometimes he coasts too hard. Watch the Derek Lewis fight. He has a great first round, and then the second round, he's beating up Derek Lewis. Derek has no movement. He's a nightmare matchup. Or Gane's a nightmare matchup for him. And he takes his foot off the gas. And then he puts it back on in the third round and puts him away. But once again, like couldn't really put him down with a huge knockdown or anything like that. That's my big worry with Ciryl Gane is I just don't see the path for him to win. Now, I think the one pressure point is exactly what Ryan brought up is there is a narrative coming into this fight. That is, can Tom Aspinall either beat Ciryl Gane faster than Jon Jones did, which I think is like 2 minutes and a couple seconds, or can he do it in a more impressive fashion? My one worry is when you're thinking about something like that, going into a heavyweight championship against a guy who is as good as Ciryl Gane is, I don't think anyone's going to doubt how good Ciryl is. You know, does that extra narrative fuck with Tom's head? That's really my only concern for him. I'm taking Tom Aspinall. I'm taking him by round 2 submission. I think Cyril's just going to circle early. He has no desire to be backed up on the fence. Every time Lewis backed him up, every time Jones and Ngannou backed him up, Ciryl would just circle out as much as he could until either he couldn't or, you know, with the Ngannou fight until he got taken down. So I'm taking Aspinall by second round sub. I don't think I want Tom Aspinall to beat Jon Jones more than anybody. But I just don't think he will make it look as easy because I think Gane is just going to be much more hesitant of the power coming his way. But we'll see. I would love nothing more than Aspinall to put him away in 40 seconds and Jon to look like a total idiot. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a very good breakdown you just gave there, Andrew. And I don't really have too much more to add there. I do see Ciryl Gane being cautious on the feet. He does have good footwork. He is fast. I do see him being able to sort of evade Tom Aspinall on the feet and not just walk himself into a big shot too early on to just walk himself into an early knockout. But if Tom does sense any danger there on the feet, I think he will get Ciryl Gane down and will just finish him sort of in a similar fashion to Jon Jones. And not saying guillotine finish, just saying with that type of ease there. So I like an early Tom Aspinall submission, round 1, round 2. I think he gets him out of there pretty early. Maybe you double chance knockout submission round 1 if you really want to get ballsy there, but we shall see. I'm also on Aspinall. I just don't really see where Ciryl Gane beats him. But with that being said, boys, we are wrapping up towards the end. Andrew, I want to say thank you very much for joining us tonight. For everyone listening, make sure to go check out Andrew's page. Andrew, if you want to shout it out and shout out your channel so anyone listening can find you, go for it.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you to you three. It's nice to actually have some people with some ball knowledge. Zach and I are sitting in the back of the Atlantic City PFL green room, and I'm listening to some of these takes, and I'm like, Jesus, no one knows anything about fucking MMA in this room. And then it's nice to actually to hear 3 people know what they're talking about. So first of all, thanks so much for having me on. Cornell Combat Sports Show, go check it out. We're on a 4-month hiatus. I'm away right now, but we're getting back in January. We got big things planned. Hopefully going to be live for first pay-per-view of the year, UFC in California. So we're trying to cook some stuff up. We'll see how it goes, but I'd love to make this a regular thing with you guys as much as we can. I just appreciate talking fights with people who know what they're talking about. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
100%, brother. Ryan, son, any of you boys have anything you want to add before we get out for the night?
Yeah, fuck the Jets. Nobody's listening to that shit. Tom Aspinall shorts. They're kind of ass. What are you guys thinking about?
Oh, I was just about to ask.
I haven't seen them.
I wasn't a big fan. Dude, for a guy that had such a sick tattoo, I just don't think like he should. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like cool. Like, I get it. Like, it's dealing with the flag, but it just doesn't really go well. And for a guy, I don't know, you got a sick tattoo like that. Like, I would think that like you have like enough creativity to rip some nice custom shorts. But I thought those were kind of butt.
Yeah, these suck. I just looked them up now. It's the first time I'm seeing them. Yeah.
Yo, who's the best shorts on?
I think Pantoja. I think he easily had the best custom shorts, like by far, and it's not even a challenge. I don't think anybody even gets close. I think Pereira's is actually kind of butt too. He definitely could have done a little bit better. But yeah, I think Pantoja by far is the coolest custom shorts. They're so clean.
I kind of fuck with Holloway's.
I was about to say
Zhang Wei Li's does have a sick one. I do like that Asian art style though, so maybe that's just me.
Fuck, here's where we start the Around the Octagon After Hours podcast, like we've talked about so many damn times. All right, let's wrap this one up, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
dude.